The morgue in 1920s Los Angeles was busier than the red carpet. Behind closed doors, coroners wrote the real endings to Hollywood fairy tales. These reports, preserved for decades, reveal how the stars truly fell. Olive Thomas's poisoned Paris trip. The lights of Paris were still glowing when a young actress staggered back to her hotel suite in the early hours of the 5th of September, 1920. Hours later, she was rushed to the American hospital, writhing in convulsions. Doctors worked frantically, but the cause was already beyond saving. Mercury bichloride, a corrosive compound that burned her stomach and destroyed her kidneys. The patient was Olive Thomas, a rising film star who never made it past her 25th year. The autopsy confirmed the damage. Stomach tissue showed chemical burns. Lab tests revealed lethal levels of mercury chloride. Her death certificate listed acute nephritis from mercury bichloride poisoning. The vial belonged to her husband, actor Jack Pickford, who had been prescribed the chemical as part of a treatment then common for syphilis. Even in tiny doses, it could kill. Investigators pressed Pickford for details. He claimed Olive drank it thinking it was water, but the story didn't add up for many. French newspapers hinted at a deliberate act. American tabloids speculated about a fight between the couple. Doctors ruled out alcohol in her system, silencing rumors that she had been drunk. The official inquest closed with a finding of accidental death. Yet whispers of foul play never stopped. The handling of her body only fueled suspicion. Olive lingered for 5 days before succumbing on the 10th of September. Within hours, the coroner released her remains for transport back to the United States. Thousands of fans lined the streets in New York when her coffin arrived, some fainting at the sight. To them, she was the baby vamp of the screen, gone far too soon. Wallace Reid's morphine addiction revealed. The studios called him the screen's most perfect lover. Audiences knew him as a clean-cut hero, the kind of man who always won the girl. What they didn't see was the bottle of morphine in his dressing room. Wallace Reid, one of Paramount's biggest stars, was caught in a dependency that began after a train accident in 1919 left him with painful injuries. Doctors prescribed morphine to keep him working, and the habit soon took over his life. By late 1922, Reid's condition was impossible to hide. On set, he slurred lines and struggled to stand. Crews reported that scenes had to be reshot again and again. He was checked into sanitariums more than once, only to be released quickly so he could return to production. Paramount executives admitted later that they encouraged his treatment only when his health began to damage the bottom line. On the 18th of January, 1923, Reid collapsed in a sanitarium in Los Angeles. He was 31 years old. The coroner's report pointed to chronic kidney and liver failure. The official death certificate recorded influenza, nephritis, and chronic morphine addiction as contributing factors. Unlike many studio deaths, Reid's case was not covered up. The scale of his addiction was too big to deny. The press made him into an example. The Los Angeles Times described his decline in detail. The New York Times reported on the sanitarium statement, noting that Reid's organs showed signs of long-term drug damage. His widow, actress Dorothy Davenport, later produced a film called Human Wreckage that dramatized the dangers of narcotics. It was one of the first anti-drug pictures in Hollywood, and it used Reid's autopsy findings as part of its promotional campaign. What shocked fans most was how openly the documents tied Reid's death to drugs. In the 1920s, addiction was rarely acknowledged in the industry. Studios worked hard to shield stars from scandal. Reid's autopsy and certificate forced the public to see that even Hollywood idols were vulnerable. His image as a dashing leading man was suddenly at odds with the frail body described in coroner records. Rudolph Valentino's stomach rupture. Crowds packed the streets of New York in August 1926, waiting for news outside the hospital. Inside, doctors fought to save the man the world called the Latin lover. Rudolph Valentino was only 31 when sudden stomach pain sent him to the hospital. At first, physicians suspected appendicitis. Within hours, exploratory surgery revealed something far worse, a ruptured ulcer that had spread infection throughout his body. The official medical notes described it as a perforated gastric ulcer leading to peritonitis. His organs were already inflamed, and the infection moved fast. Despite the surgery, his condition collapsed. The autopsy confirmed widespread infection and a body ravaged by sepsis. His death certificate recorded general peritonitis following perforated gastric ulcer. The speed of his decline shocked fans. On the 15th of August, he was strong enough to sign autographs from his hospital bed. By the 23rd of August, he was dead. The sudden turn fueled rumors that something sinister had happened. Tabloids pushed stories of poisoning, whispering that rivals in Hollywood had arranged his death. Bellevue Hospital doctors dismissed the claims, pointing directly to the perforated ulcer, yet the rumors never disappeared. Funeral reports described chaotic scenes. Tens of thousands filled the streets of New York, with mounted police struggling to hold back crowds outside Frankie Campbell Funeral Chapel. In some accounts, mourners fainted against the barricades. Inside, Valentino's body was dressed in formal wear. Studio representatives tried to quiet speculation, but his autopsy results had already leaked. The papers ran technical descriptions of his ulcer and infection, lending a grim medical reality to the hysteria. The strangest details came later. When his organs were examined, doctors noted the ulcer had been present for years. Friends admitted Valentino often complained of stomach pain but ignored it, insisting he was too busy working. The findings suggested he may have been living with the condition while still performing on screen. What makes this case memorable isn't only the medical record, but the scale of reaction. His autopsy confirmed a ruptured ulcer. His certificate confirmed peritonitis. But the public refused to accept a medical explanation. Barbara Lamar's wasting illness. By the mid-1920s, Hollywood promoted Barbara Lamar as the girl who was too beautiful. She was glamorous, scandalous, and in demand. Behind the studio posters, her health was falling apart. Years of overwork and a relentless lifestyle left her body in rapid decline. In late 1925, Lamar collapsed while filming. Doctors diagnosed tuberculosis and nephritis, a serious inflammation of the kidneys. She was moved to a private home in Altadena, California, where her condition worsened. Nurses reported that she weighed under 90 pounds. Despite attempts to shield the news, the press leaked details that shocked her fans. On the 30th of January, 1926, Barbara Lamar died at only 29. The coroner's findings confirmed what many suspected. Her autopsy revealed tubercular nephritis, and her body showed signs of severe wasting. The death certificate listed tubercular nephritis as the official cause. In an era that thrived on glamour, the medical documents painted a brutal picture of how far her health had collapsed. Coverage in the Los Angeles Times emphasized the contrast between her public image and the frail figure described by doctors. Obituaries called her one of the brightest stars of the silent era, but the details from the autopsy gave the story a darker edge. The once celebrated beauty queen had been reduced to skin and bone. Fans poured into Hollywood Memorial Park Cemetery for the funeral. Studio executives sent enormous flower arrangements, trying to control the narrative. Yet the official papers made it impossible to avoid the truth. The star who lived in headlines about affairs and parties had died of a slow, painful illness. What unsettled Hollywood was how sudden the change seemed. Just a year earlier, she had appeared in The White Monkey and The Girl from Montmartre. By the start of 1926, she was gone. Doctors later noted that her symptoms had been visible long before, but ignored or covered up. The tragedy wasn't only her age. It was the gap between the myth and the reality. Her death certificate named tuberculosis and nephritis. Her autopsy confirmed the wasting effects of the disease. The public saw posters of a beautiful star, while the medical reports recorded a body destroyed by illness. John Gilbert's damaged heart. Hollywood once called him the Great Lover. John Gilbert was a king of the silent screen, a rival to Valentino, and one of MGM's biggest box office draws. By the mid-1930s, he was a shadow of that image. Years of heavy drinking had left his body fragile, and the damage was about to catch up. In January 1936, Gilbert collapsed at his home in Bel Air. Doctors rushed him to Good Samaritan Hospital in Los Angeles, but there was little they could do. He was pronounced dead on the 9th of January at the age of 36. The coroner's autopsy identified heart disease. His death certificate cited myocarditis and coronary thrombosis as the cause. Behind the medical terms, it was clear years of alcohol abuse had scarred his heart beyond repair. The press treated the case with a mix of sympathy and scandal. Reports in the Los Angeles Times highlighted his years of declining health. Studio insiders whispered that MGM had done little to intervene, letting Gilbert's drinking spiral as long as he could still appear on screen. By the time executives noticed the toll, it was too late. The autopsy confirmed extensive heart damage. Pathologists noted scarring and inflammation in the cardiac tissue. Doctors said it was the kind of condition seen in older men, not in someone just past his mid-30s. The official record showed how deeply addiction had ravaged him. His death rattled Hollywood. Gilbert had been part of the generation that bridged silent films to talkies. His decline was seen not only as personal tragedy but as a warning. For many, the autopsy details underscored how unchecked alcohol use could end a career and a life quickly. The funeral took place at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, with MGM paying for a lavish service. Yet the studio could not hide the truth written in medical ink. His death certificate made no mention of Hollywood politics or failed contracts. It recorded a damaged heart. What makes Gilbert's case stand out is how openly the coroner's findings clashed with his screen persona. The film showed a romantic idol. The autopsy showed a man whose body was failing from long-term abuse. In the end, the truth was in the paperwork, not the posters. Marie Prevost's grisly discovery. The phone in Marie Prevost's Hollywood apartment rang unanswered for days. When neighbors finally alerted police, officers forced their way inside on the 21st of January, 1937. What they found was grim. Prevost, once a star of silent films and early talkies, was lying lifeless in her bed. She was only 38. The coroner's autopsy revealed acute alcoholism and malnutrition. Her liver showed extensive damage from years of drinking, and her body weight had dropped far below normal. The death certificate listed acute alcoholism as the cause of death, with contributing factors of undernourishment. The findings left no doubt the lifestyle that had kept her in gossip columns had destroyed her health. But the discovery of the scene made the story infamous. Prevost's small dachshund had survived alone in the apartment. Reports from the Los Angeles police suggested the animal had bitten at her body in desperation. Though later exaggerated in tabloids, the coroner confirmed evidence of minor post-mortem animal activity. For fans who remembered her from comedies like The Marriage Circle and The Girl in the Limousine, the details were almost too shocking to process. The press coverage was relentless. The Los Angeles Times reported her body had been discovered only after days of silence from her home. Hollywood insiders admitted she had been struggling financially. Work had dried up, and she had been reduced to taking small character roles. Friends later revealed she often chose alcohol over meals, which explained the severe malnutrition noted in her autopsy. Her funeral was small, attended by only a handful of industry colleagues. The studios offered little public support. In fact, many headlines focused more on the lurid scene than on her career. The contrast between the glamorous image on screen and the tragic reality in her apartment was impossible to ignore. The documents remain plain. The autopsy proved alcohol and starvation had ended her life. The certificate recorded it without embellishment. Lon Chaney's secret cancer battle. Audiences knew him as the man of 1,000 faces, master of makeup and monster roles. Off-screen, Lon Chaney kept his private life tightly guarded. That secrecy extended even to his health. By 1929, he was already struggling with a throat condition that would soon end his life. Doctors diagnosed him with carcinoma of the larynx. The cancer was aggressive, and treatment options in the late 1920s were limited. Radiation therapy was attempted, but it weakened his immune system and left him vulnerable to infection. By the summer of 1930, he developed bronchial complications, followed quickly by pneumonia. The official records are clear. Chaney died at the age of 47 on the 26th of August, 1930. His autopsy revealed advanced cancer of the throat with secondary infection. The death certificate listed carcinoma of the larynx, complicated by pneumonia. To fans, it was a shock. Just months earlier, he had appeared in Thunder, and rumors swirled that he might take a major role in Dracula. What disturbed many was how little the public knew while he was still alive. Chaney rarely spoke to reporters, and MGM kept news of his illness quiet. Even some colleagues believed he was only taking a short break from acting. When the coroner's findings came out, the contrast was stark. Hollywood's most fearsome screen monster had been undone by disease, not by scandal or accident. Press coverage following his death highlighted the technical notes. The New York Times obituary mentioned the carcinoma and pneumonia directly. The language was clinical, but the reaction was emotional. Fans flooded MGM with letters mourning the loss. The studios avoided discussing the radiation treatments, which had failed to slow the illness. The funeral at Forest Lawn drew industry leaders and silent-era stars. His body was cremated and the urn kept private, fitting his lifelong desire for discretion. Yet the documents left behind told a story he never wanted public. The autopsy confirmed his throat had been destroyed by cancer. The certificate fixed the cause in writing. Chaney built a career creating terrifying faces for the screen. In the end, the scariest details came from the coroner's report describing a disease he fought in silence until it consumed him. Carole Landis's altered death scene. When police entered Carole Landis's Pacific Palisades home on the 5th of July, 1948, they found the actress in her bedroom, lying on the floor beside an empty bottle of Seconal. She was 29. Landis had been a popular star during the war years, entertaining troops overseas and earning the nickname the Ping Girl. By 1948, her career had slowed and her personal life had become increasingly turbulent. The autopsy confirmed a massive barbiturate overdose. Toxicology tests revealed Seconal levels far above a fatal dose. Her death certificate listed barbiturate poisoning, suicide, as the official cause. But investigators noted inconsistencies. Bruising on her body raised questions, and friends reported that she had been in distress the night before after an argument with actor Rex Harrison, her married lover. According to police records, Harrison was the last person to see her alive. He told detectives that Landis had been distraught and that he left her after a late-night visit. When he returned the next day, he claimed to have found her unresponsive and called a doctor instead of the police. By the time officers arrived, the scene had already been disturbed. That detail fueled speculation that evidence had been altered before investigators could secure the room. Press coverage walked a fine line. The Los Angeles Times focused on the medical facts, quoting the coroner's confirmation of Seconal poisoning. Other outlets pushed the scandal angle, suggesting Harrison had played a role in cleaning up the scene. Although the inquest upheld the finding of suicide, the reports of bruising and delayed police contact kept suspicions alive. The autopsy notes and death certificate became central to the narrative. Both confirmed the overdose, but neither explained the irregularities surrounding her discovery. Fans questioned why the studio system closed ranks so quickly, protecting Harrison from scrutiny. Rumors of a cover-up followed him for years. Her funeral at Forest Lawn was attended by hundreds, many of them servicemen who remembered her wartime tours. Yet the final image for the public came not from her films, but from the coroner's office. The official paperwork confirmed barbiturate poisoning. Ramon Novarro's tortured last hours. Halloween night in 1968 turned grim in the Hollywood Hills. Neighbors heard nothing unusual from Ramon Novarro's home, but the next day a friend found the 69-year-old actor lifeless in his bedroom. Once celebrated as the star of Ben-Hur 1925, Novarro's final hours revealed a darker story than any silent epic. The autopsy was blunt. He had sustained more than 20 wounds, mostly to the face and head. Cause of death was listed as asphyxiation after choking on his own blood. The death certificate confirmed homicide. Investigators concluded he had been attacked in his own home, a crime that shocked even hardened LAPD officers. Police quickly focused on two young brothers, Paul and Tom Ferguson, who had visited Novarro that night. They later confessed to beating him during a robbery gone wrong. The details that emerged in court were disturbing enough that newspapers carefully edited descriptions. Even so, the public learned that the violence had been extensive and that Novarro's body showed clear evidence of brutal assault. Media coverage balanced between sensationalism and restraint. The Los Angeles Times reported the autopsy findings, stating directly that Novarro died from asphyxiation due to bleeding into the respiratory passages. Other outlets highlighted his career, contrasting the heroism of Ben-Hur with the brutality of his death. Rumors about missing money and stolen possessions fueled further intrigue. The crime scene itself deepened the eerie tone. Investigators found the house ransacked, with blood spattered across the bedroom. Friends testified that Novarro often invited younger men into his home, but no one expected it to end this way. Court records later confirmed that about $20 in cash had been stolen, a trivial sum compared to the life taken. The funeral was held quietly with his family and a few industry colleagues attending. The coroner's documents became the lasting record. His autopsy confirmed blunt force injuries and fatal asphyxiation. The death certificate fixed the manner of death as homicide. Clifton Webb's final autopsy notes. Elegance defined Clifton Webb. On screen, he played cultured men with sharp wit in films like Laura and The Razor's Edge. Off-screen, he lived in a Beverly Hills mansion with his mother until her death, cultivating an image of refinement. By 1966, however, years of heart trouble were wearing him down. On the 13th of October, 1966, Webb collapsed at his home. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital, but he was pronounced dead soon after arrival. He was 76. The coroner's autopsy confirmed coronary occlusion and advanced arteriosclerosis, a hardening of the arteries that had developed over years. The death certificate listed coronary occlusion arteriosclerotic heart disease as the official cause. The medical report revealed the extent of his condition. His arteries were narrowed, and the heart muscle showed clear evidence of strain. Doctors described it as a long-term deterioration, not a sudden failure. The autopsy results left no mystery, but the detail underscored how far his health had declined in his final years. Press coverage emphasized the contrast between Webb's polished screen persona and the reality of his death. The New York Times obituary noted the official cause without embellishment, pointing to heart disease. In Hollywood, colleagues remarked on his dedication to privacy. Few had realized just how serious his condition had become. The funeral was small, held at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, where Webb was buried in the Great Mausoleum. Industry figures who had known him during his peak attended, but the ceremony was quiet compared to the star-studded events often associated with Hollywood icons. The coroner's report became the most revealing document of his final years. What makes Webb's case notable is the absence of scandal. There were no rumors of foul play, no speculation about drugs or violence. The autopsy and certificate spoke only of natural causes, the inevitable end of long-standing heart disease. For a man who valued control over his image, the paperwork still stripped away the glamour, reducing his death to clinical terms.
In the shadowed corners of Hollywood, behind the velvet ropes of exclusivity, lie tales of extravagance that spiraled into chaos. These aren't just parties, they are legends, whispered about, but rarely confirmed. Each one promised a night of unparalleled revelry, but took a turn into the scandalous, leaving behind a trail of secrets, scandals, and sometimes ruin. Take, for instance, the legendary gatherings at the Chateau Marmont, where the elite of the elite come to play away from prying eyes. But not all that happens in the hallowed halls of Hollywood's favorite hideaway stays hidden. There was one night, a party so extravagant it promised to outshine all others. The guest list read like a who's who of Tinseltown's finest, actors, directors, musicians, all mingling under the star-lit sky of the chateau's gardens. The champagne flowed like rivers, and the music set the perfect backdrop for a night of uninhibited celebration. But as the night wore on, what started as a glamorous affair took a turn toward the scandalous. A rising starlet, known as much for her breathtaking performances on screen as her tumultuous life off it, found herself at the center of a storm that would rock Hollywood to its core. Rumors swirled, whispers spread, and by dawn, the party had become the stuff of legend, not for its opulence, but for the secrets it laid bare and the careers it threatened to unravel. This is but a glimpse into the world of scandalous Hollywood parties that took a wrong turn. From the roaring 20s to the digital age, we'll peel back the velvet curtain to reveal the most jaw-dropping events that have become etched in Hollywood lore. Some tales are dark, others shocking, and a few downright unbelievable. You might think you know the stories of glitz and glamour, but behind the sparkle, the truth is often more fascinating, more twisted, and more enthralling than fiction. The Silent Era's Secret Soirees. In the heart of the Roaring Twenties, Hollywood was a burgeoning empire of dreams, a place where the silver screen flickered with the faces of those who had become gods and goddesses to the adoring masses. It was a time of unprecedented freedom, of rebellion against the old norms, and nowhere was this more evident than in the secret soirees of the silent era's brightest stars. One such party that would etch itself into the annals of Hollywood history took place in the summer of 1924, hosted by none other than the enigmatic William Desmond Taylor, a director known for his lavish productions and equally lavish lifestyle. Taylor's mansion, nestled in the lush hills overlooking Los Angeles, was the setting for a gathering that promised to be the epitome of the era's decadence. The guest list was a veritable who's who of the silent film era. Icons like Clara Bow, the It Girl herself, and the dashing Douglas Fairbanks mingled with up-and-comers, all drawn to Taylor's notorious parties for their promise of escape and excess. The air was thick with anticipation, the gardens illuminated by strings of fairy lights casting a magical glow over the assembled guests. As the night unfolded, the champagne flowed freely and the music, a heady mix of jazz and the era's top hits, never stopped. Taylor was the perfect host, charming and attentive, ensuring that every glass was full and every desire catered to. But as the revelry reached its peak, whispers began to circulate among the guests. Whispers of a scandal that threatened to overshadow the gaiety. The center of the whispers was none other than Mabel Normand, a star known for her comedic timing and turbulent personal life. Normand, it was rumored, had been seen in a compromising position with one of Hollywood's married moguls, a scandal that, if true, could ruin careers and lives. The party, so full of life and laughter, suddenly felt charged with tension as guests speculated and gossiped about the implications of the rumor, but the night was far from over. As the hours waned, Taylor himself became the subject of whispers. His past, shrouded in mystery and rumors of connections to the underworld, added an element of danger to the festivities, and then, as suddenly as it had begun, the party came to an abrupt end. Taylor was found dead, his murder sending shockwaves through Hollywood and turning the party into a scene of a crime that would never be fully solved. The aftermath of the party and Taylor's untimely death cast a long shadow over Hollywood. Careers were tarnished, lives were changed forever, and the silent era's secret soirees were never quite the same. The night of glamour and excess had taken a dark turn, becoming a cautionary tale of the price of fame and the fragility of the personas crafted by Hollywood's brightest stars. The Golden Age's gilded excess. A period that spanned the 1930s to the 1950s was a time of unparalleled glamour and opulence. It was an era when the film industry reached new heights of creativity and influence, and its stars were worshipped like deities. Amidst this backdrop of cinematic revolution, the parties thrown by Hollywood's elite were legendary, embodying the excess and extravagance of the times. One of the most infamous gatherings of this era was the lavish affair hosted by media mogul William Randolph Hearst at his palatial estate, Hearst Castle, in the mid-1930s. Hearst, known for his extravagant lifestyle and influential media empire, spared no expense in entertaining his guests, who were a veritable who's who of Hollywood royalty. The guest list included names like Charlie Chaplin, Joan Crawford, and Clark Gable, among others. The party was a spectacle of luxury, with fine dining, orchestras, and entertainment that lasted well into the night. Hearst Castle, with its opulent rooms and sprawling gardens, provided the perfect setting for such an event, encapsulating the grandeur of the Golden Age. However, beneath the surface of this glittering celebration, tensions simmered, particularly surrounding Hearst's companion, actress Marion Davies, and her rumored relationship with Charlie Chaplin. As the evening progressed, the combination of alcohol, jealousy, and simmering rivalries led to an incident that would become one of Hollywood's most whispered-about scandals. According to lore, Hearst, suspecting Davies and Chaplin of having an affair, attempted to confront Chaplin but accidentally injured another guest in a case of mistaken identity. The incident was quickly covered up, and details remain murky to this day, but it underscored the volatile mix of power, passion, and secrecy that defined Hollywood's golden age. Despite the scandal, or perhaps because of it, the party at Hearst Castle became a symbol of the era's gilded excess. It was a vivid illustration of the lengths to which Hollywood's elite would go to entertain and be entertained, creating a world far removed from the realities of the Great Depression that gripped the country. In the years that followed, stories of the party circulated in hushed tones, a reminder of the opulence and intrigue that characterized Hollywood's most glamorous era. The rebel without a cause's last night. In the vibrant tapestry of Hollywood's history, few stars burned as brightly or as briefly as James Dean. An emblem of youth, disillusionment, and rebellion, Dean's meteoric rise in the early 1950s captured the imagination of a generation. His tragic death in a car crash in September 1955 at the tender age of 24 cemented his legacy as a cultural icon, forever young, forever brooding, the ultimate rebel without a cause. The night before his untimely demise, Dean was reportedly seen at a gathering among Hollywood's elite, a party that buzzed with the energy of post-war America's burgeoning new wave. The location was a sleek, modernist home in the Hollywood Hills, a place where the city's glittering lights stretched out like a jeweled carpet below. The air was filled with the sound of laughter, the clink of glasses, and the soft strains of a jazz quartet. The young actor, known for his intense performances and equally intense life off-screen, moved among the guests. He was at the cusp of greatness, with East of Eden earning him critical acclaim and Rebel Without a Cause set to premiere. Dean was the embodiment of the era's restless spirit, and his presence electrified the atmosphere. As the evening wore on, conversations ebbed and flowed around the latest studio gossip, the new faces in town, and the roles that everyone was vying for. Dean, ever the enigmatic figure, spoke passionately about his love for racing, his eyes alight with the thrill of living on the edge. Little did the guests know that these moments would be among the last shared with the actor. The party continued into the early hours, a night of promise and potential, but as dawn broke over the city, the news of Dean's fatal accident on a desolate stretch of California highway sent shockwaves through the community. The Manson family crashes the scene. The late 1960s in Hollywood were a time of cultural upheaval, marked by a shift towards more experimental and boundary-pushing content in cinema. It was also a period when the city's glittering veneer began to crack, revealing a darker underbelly. This shift reached its horrifying apex in August 1969 with the Manson family murders, a series of brutal killings that shocked the world and forever altered the perception of Hollywood as a carefree paradise. Charles Manson, a failed musician with a charismatic personality, had formed a cult-like following known as the Manson family. Manson's twisted ideology and control over his followers culminated in a plan to ignite a race war, which he believed was foretold in the Beatles song Helter Skelter. As part of this plan, Manson directed his followers to carry out a series of murders. On the night of August 8, 1969, 4 members of the Manson family invaded the home of actress Sharon Tate, who was 8.5 months pregnant at the time. Tate was hosting a small get-together with friends, celebrity hairstylist Jay Sebring, aspiring screenwriter Wojciech Frykowski, and Frykowski's girlfriend, coffee heiress Abigail Folger. Tate's husband, director Roman Polanski, was in Europe working on a film project. The Manson followers brutally murdered Tate and her guests, leaving the scene with a chilling message written in blood. The following night, Manson's followers killed Leno and Rosemary LaBianca in their home, further escalating the horror. The murders sent shockwaves through Hollywood, casting a shadow over the entertainment industry and the counterculture movement. The impact of these events on Hollywood was profound. The sense of safety and innocence that had defined the early part of the decade was shattered. High-profile parties, once the epitome of Hollywood's social scene, became more guarded, with increased security and a more selective guest list. The Manson family murders marked the end of an era, as the industry and those within it grappled with the vulnerability that had been so brutally exposed. In the aftermath, the trials of Manson and his followers became a media sensation, further embedding the tragedy in the public consciousness. Manson's ability to manipulate his followers and the brutality of the crimes became a dark fascination for many, leading to numerous books, films, and documentaries attempting to understand or explain the events. The legacy of that night and the subsequent murders is a complex tapestry of fear, fascination, and an enduring cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked influence and the loss of innocence. Hollywood, in the years that followed, would continue to evolve, but the shadow of the Manson family murders lingers, a stark reminder of the darkness that can lie beneath the surface of the brightest lights. Studio 54. West, Disco and Decadence. In the late 1970s, as disco fever swept across the United States, Hollywood responded with its own version of New York City's infamous Studio 54. The West Coast's answer to the discotheque craze was the Starwood Club, a venue that quickly became synonymous with the era's excesses and the entertainment industry's hedonistic pursuits. Nestled on the Sunset Strip, the Starwood not only hosted some of the most extravagant parties, but also became a focal point for the cultural shift happening in America. The Starwood was more than just a nightclub. It was a haven where the elite of Hollywood's music and movie industries could mingle with rock stars, socialites, and even the underworld. On any given night, the dance floor was a mosaic of famous faces, everyone from John Travolta, fresh off the success of Saturday Night Fever, to members of the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin. The air was thick with the scent of success, ambition, and the unmistakable aroma of the 1970s most notorious indulgences. One of the most talked about events at the Starwood was a private party thrown by Elton John in 1978. The event was in celebration of his latest album's release, and the guest list was a who's who of Hollywood royalty. The party was a spectacle of opulence, with live performances, an endless flow of champagne, and a dance floor that stayed packed until the early hours of the morning. Yet beneath the glittering surface, the party epitomized the era's darker side, excessive drug use, and the blurring lines between public personas and private lives. The Starwood's reputation for decadence was not without its consequences. The club frequently found itself in the crosshairs of law enforcement, with raids uncovering illegal activities that went far beyond typical nightclub fare. The club's owner, Eddie Nash, was a controversial figure rumored to have connections to organized crime, adding a layer of intrigue and danger to the club's allure. Despite, or perhaps because of, its notoriety, the Starwood became a symbol of the disco era's excesses and the cultural transformation underway in Hollywood. The club's eventual closure in the early 1980s marked the end of an era, but the stories of its legendary parties continue to captivate those fascinated by Hollywood's golden years of disco and decadence. The Belushi tragedy, laughter to silence. The early 1980s in Hollywood were a time of great contradiction. The film industry was booming with blockbuster hits and the rise of new stars, yet it was also a period marked by personal tragedies that underscored the cost of fame. Among the most poignant was the death of John Belushi, a comedian and actor whose life was cut tragically short in 1982. John Belushi, known for his vibrant energy and unparalleled comedic talent, was a star on the rise. With iconic roles in Saturday Night Live and hit films like Animal House and The Blues Brothers, Belushi had quickly become one of America's most beloved entertainers. However, behind the scenes, Belushi was struggling with the pressures of fame and the temptations that came with it. On the night of March 4, 1982, Belushi was found dead at the Chateau Marmont in Los Angeles, a hotel known for its celebrity guests and its discretion. The night before his death, Belushi had been visiting various clubs and parties in Hollywood, a regular occurrence in his fast-paced life. These gatherings were known for their excesses, with drugs and alcohol flowing freely. Belushi, battling addiction, was both a victim and a participant in this lifestyle. The news of Belushi's death sent shockwaves through Hollywood and the world. The comedian, only 33 years old, had died from a speedball, a combination of heroin and cocaine, a stark reminder of the dangers lurking behind the industry's glamorous facade. The parties that once celebrated his successes had become part of a darker narrative, one that highlighted the risks of celebrity culture. Belushi's death marked a turning point in Hollywood's relationship with substance abuse. It prompted a reevaluation of the industry's handling of addiction and the support systems available to those in the spotlight. While the parties continued, there was now an undercurrent of caution, a reminder of the fragility of life in the fast lane. The tragedy of John Belushi's death remains one of Hollywood's most sobering tales. It serves as a cautionary story of talent and potential lost to the pitfalls of fame. Belushi's legacy, however, lives on through his work, a testament to his enduring impact on comedy and film. His life and untimely death are reminders of the human cost of entertainment, the importance of compassion and intervention, and the need for a cultural shift towards understanding and addressing addiction. The Fast Times of the 80s, Brat Pack. The 1980s in Hollywood were defined by a group of young actors and actresses who came to be known as the Brat Pack. This unofficial ensemble, including Emilio Estevez, Rob Lowe, Demi Moore, Molly Ringwald, and others, became synonymous with the decade's youth culture, starring in a series of films that captured the essence of teenage and young adult life. Their off-screen camaraderie, often highlighted in the media, was emblematic of the era's exuberance and excess. One of the most emblematic gatherings of this group occurred after the premiere of St. Elmo's Fire in 1985, a film that has since become a cultural touchstone for the 80s. The party, held at a popular Los Angeles nightclub, was a microcosm of the decade's lavish lifestyle. The Brat Pack, fresh from the success of their latest film, were the center of attention, embodying the aspirations and dreams of a generation. The event was filled with the era's signature extravagance. Neon lights illuminated the faces of Hollywood's newest royalty as they danced to the synthesizer-heavy hits of the time. The atmosphere was one of unchecked optimism and celebration, a stark contrast to the more somber tones that would come to define the end of the decade. However, the party also underscored the pressures faced by these young stars. The intense media scrutiny and the industry's expectations often led to personal struggles played out in the public eye. The Brat Pack's members, despite their success, were not immune to the pitfalls of fame. Their gatherings, while glamorous, were also a reminder of the challenges of growing up in the spotlight. This particular party, and others like it, became a symbol of the Brat Pack's influence on Hollywood and American culture. The films they starred in and the lives they led shaped perceptions of youth and celebrity in the 1980s. Their legacy, a complex amalgamation of on-screen personas and real-life personas, remains a fascinating study of fame, friendship, and the fleeting nature of celebrity. The 90s when grunge met glam. The 1990s in Hollywood marked a significant shift from the glossy excess of the 80s to a more gritty, raw aesthetic influenced by the grunge movement. This era saw the rise of a new generation of stars and filmmakers who were keen on exploring deeper, more complex narratives both on-screen and off. The parties of the 90s reflected this change, becoming less about opulent displays of wealth and more about artistic expression and genuine connections. One of the most iconic gatherings of this era was a party thrown by Quentin Tarantino following the 1994 premiere of Pulp Fiction at the New York Film Festival. The film, with its non-linear storytelling and eclectic soundtrack, became an instant classic, catapulting Tarantino and his cast into the Hollywood elite. The after-party, held at a trendy downtown club, was a melting pot of the decade's most influential figures in film, music, and art. The guest list was a who's who of 90s culture, from Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love representing the pinnacle of grunge music to Johnny Depp and Winona Ryder, the era's quintessential Hollywood couple. The atmosphere was electric, filled with the buzz of creative minds exchanging ideas and the sounds of the decade's alternative rock and hip-hop hits pulsating through the air. This gathering was emblematic of the 90s cultural zeitgeist, where the lines between different artistic worlds blurred. Hollywood stars mingled with rock icons, and filmmakers discussed projects with musicians, leading to collaborations that would define the era. The party was not just a celebration of pulp fiction's success, but a testament to the collaborative spirit that defined 90s Hollywood. However, the decade was also a time of introspection and reckoning for many in the industry. The party's backdrop was an industry beginning to grapple with issues of representation, substance abuse, and the impact of fame on personal well-being. These themes were not just prevalent in the conversations at gatherings, but also began to influence the projects that were being greenlit, signaling a shift towards more socially conscious storytelling.
One actress negotiated her way to more money than her male co-stars before women could even open their own credit cards. Another faked a persona so well, Congress didn't realize she was playing them. Want to know how 21 dumb stars outwitted Hollywood itself? You're in the right place. Marion Davies outsmarted Hearst's empire. In the 1920s, everyone thought Marion Davies was just William Randolph Hearst's girlfriend, a pretty face with no talent, bought into stardom. But that wasn't the full picture. While Hearst was busy controlling headlines, Davies was making smart moves behind the scenes. She bought real estate all over Los Angeles and flipped homes like a pro. During the Depression, she donated millions to children's hospitals and relief funds. She also ran one of the biggest private charities in Hollywood without using Hearst's name. Studio execs mocked her comedy roles, but silent film directors knew she had timing sharper than most men on the lot. At San Simeon, she handled guest lists, dinner seating, and business deals with major stars and politicians. She wasn't just the hostess, she ran the house. When Hearst lost almost everything, she quietly sold off her properties to cover his debts. No press, no credit. She bailed him out, then walked away from the spotlight. Gracie Allen masterminded her persona. She played the sweet scatterbrain, but none of it was off the cuff. She built that character line by line. In vaudeville, she handled timing. George Burns later admitted she got the laughs, not him. Offstage, she edited their routines, tracked what killed with the crowd, and switched punchlines on the fly. Radio made them national stars. Gracie wrote many of her ditzy answers herself. Every pause, misused word, and twist was designed to feel accidental. It wasn't. Reportedly, CBS once asked to replace her voice actor for a different show. They didn't realize Gracie was the voice, not an act, a calculated role. She even faked a presidential run in 1940 just to spike ratings. Vote for Gracie buttons showed up on real ballots. She never blinked on mic. At home, she kept their finances in order, booked performances, and picked when to go live. George called her the boss. Harpo Marx played 4 instruments. He didn't speak on screen, so people thought he wasn't smart. Wrong. He was one of the sharpest Marx brothers. He taught himself to play the harp without a teacher. He couldn't read music, so he memorized entire compositions by ear. He also played piano, clarinet, and violin. When studios asked for a musical number, Harpo didn't just perform, he composed. Even classical musicians were stunned by his technique. He also spoke a few languages, mostly learned on the road. In between tours, he read constantly. Not gossip, but real books. He once sent Groucho a telegram written entirely in Latin. On film sets, he didn't just goof off. He choreographed every move. Props, timing, camera angle, it was all mapped out ahead of time. He was also a master chess player. Tournaments, exhibitions, even playing blindfolded. He sometimes hustled for cash between gigs. Chico Marx's poker math genius. He was the crazy brother with the fake Italian accent. What fans didn't know, he was the numbers guy. Before the Marx brothers were famous, Chico paid for train tickets by winning poker games on the road. He once turned $5 into enough to fund a month-long tour. He wasn't just lucky, he calculated odds on the spot. One producer said Chico could track every hand at the table while cracking jokes. When they hit Broadway, Chico handled contracts. He negotiated better cuts for the brothers, made sure they got paid in cash, and spotted shady deals before the lawyers did. He was also tight with gangsters, but stayed safe. Clubs protected him because he brought in crowds and never cheated, just won. A lot. Even at MGM, when execs tried lowballing the team, Chico smiled, played dumb, and walked out with double the offer. Mae West wrote her own fame. She didn't wait for Hollywood to discover her. She wrote her way into stardom. Her first big hit? A stage play called Sex. She wrote it, starred in it, and got herself arrested for it. Censors tried to shut her down, and audiences doubled. When she hit film in her late 30s, studios said she was too old, too slow, too crude. So she wrote her own dialogue. One-liners, zingers, comebacks. They were all hers. In She Done Him Wrong, she delivered the line, "Why don't you come up sometime and see me?"
Why don't you come up sometime and see me?
That wasn't in the script. That was Mae. She often filmed with male leads who couldn't keep up, so she told directors to cut around them. Scenes were restructured just to match her pacing. She also added double entendres that barely slipped past censors. Fans quoted her. Moralists panicked. The box office exploded. Carole Lombard negotiated her own salary. She lit up screwball comedies with wild energy and sharp delivery. People thought she was just naturally funny. They missed the businesswoman behind the scenes. By 1936, she wasn't just starring. She was negotiating. Paramount offered her a flat fee for My Man Godfrey. She turned it down. Instead, she asked for a lower base salary with a cut of the box office. It worked. The film was a hit. She earned more than most of her male co-stars and started a trend other actresses copied later. She tracked her earnings herself and read every contract. No manager, no middleman. When studios pushed back, she pushed harder. Even studio heads called her a tough talker in pearls. On set, she wasn't afraid to question scripts or ask for rewrites. If a joke didn't land, she'd offer a sharper one. Fast. Jean Harlow's script rewrites surprised studios. She was sold as the original dumb blonde. Platinum hair, pouty look, flirty laugh. That's what the studios pushed. But she knew exactly what she was doing. Behind closed doors, Harlow rewrote her own lines. She studied pacing, swapped out weak jokes, and trimmed dialogue for punch. Writers at MGM started letting her tweak scenes because the result was always better. She wasn't flashy about it, no ego, just results. Directors loved her instincts. She could change the rhythm of a scene with one raised eyebrow or pause. Even Clark Gable said she was one of the smartest actors he'd worked with. Privately, she read constantly and had a dry sense of humor. She didn't drink, didn't party. She just worked. At 26, she passed suddenly due to kidney failure. Headlines focused on her looks, her scandalous roles, her dumb act. They missed the truth. Zsa Zsa Gabor knew the game. She was known for three things: her accent, her husbands, and her diamonds. People laughed at her interviews. They shouldn't have. Zsa Zsa knew exactly what she was doing. In the 1940s, she played up her image as a spoiled socialite. Meanwhile, she was buying real estate in Beverly Hills, cheap at the time, and flipping properties for massive gains. She used marriages as PR. Paparazzi followed her, magazine spreads exploded, and studio offers followed. Her screen time stayed short, but the check stayed long. She turned public feuds into headlines. A slap here, a sassy line there, It kept her in the papers without doing much work. Even after her film career faded, she made money from appearances, endorsements, and licensing her name. When asked if she knew how to cook, she replied, "I'm a great housekeeper. Every time I leave a man, I keep his house." Marie Wilson owned a comedy franchise. She made her name as Irma, the lovable radio blonde with zero clue. But Marie? She was anything but clueless. My friend Irma started on radio, jumped to film, then hit television. Wilson played the lead in all three. What most people don't know, she controlled the brand. She held onto her role contractually. If Irma went anywhere, Marie went too. She had say over scripts, appearances, even merchandising. Radio execs thought they could swap her out for someone younger. She fought it and won. Audiences didn't want Irma. They wanted her Irma. When producers pitched a spin-off without her, she blocked it. She wasn't about to let her creation go solo without a fight. She also controlled her press. No scandals, no drama, just goofy charm and full control of her career path. By the early 50s, Wilson had turned a one-note radio character into a full-on comedy empire, all with a voice people thought was just for laughs. Judy Holliday outsmarted Congress. In Born Yesterday, she played a clueless blonde who couldn't string a sentence together. Audiences loved it. Congress didn't. In 1950, she got called before the House Un-American Activities Committee during the Red Scare. Her name came up in connection with suspected communists. They expected her to fumble. Instead, she played her screen character. Ditzy, confused, always asking for clarification. The panel underestimated her. She answered every question truthfully, carefully, and with just enough nonsense to frustrate the investigation. She didn't name names. She didn't lie. She just wore them down. Privately, Judy was sharp. She spoke a few languages, wrote music, and was known for doing complex crossword puzzles during breaks on set. Columbia wanted to pull her from Born Yesterday before it opened. She refused. The film hit theaters, crushed the box office, and won her the Oscar. Lucille Ball was studio-level smart. She was America's clown queen. What people didn't see was the business mind running the show behind the camera. In 1950, she co-founded Desilu Productions with Desi Arnaz. At the time, no woman ran a major studio. Lucille became the first. She didn't just act, she handled casting, budgets, and production schedules. CBS executives pushed for cheaper film stock. She refused. That decision let I Love Lucy be rebroadcast in perfect quality, long after other shows degraded. She was also behind one of TV's smartest deals. Instead of taking a salary bump, she and Desi asked for ownership rights to the episodes. Syndication money? All theirs. Under Desilu, she greenlit shows nobody else would touch, like Star Trek and Mission Impossible. Her approval alone made them happen. Even after her divorce, she bought out Desi's shares and ran the company solo. Tony Curtis mastered studio politics. He got written off early as a pretty boy. He had the looks, the swagger, and a Bronx accent studios tried to scrub clean. But he had brains they didn't see coming. Curtis learned fast how to survive the studio system. He kept close to gossip columnists and stayed in the headlines, even when the roles were bad. Then he picked his shots. When given the script for Sweet Smell of Success, he knew it wasn't safe, but it was smart. He took a pay cut to prove he could act. It worked. After that, he started pushing for more complex roles. He lobbied hard for The Defiant Ones, a racial drama in 1958. Studios thought he was out of his depth. He earned an Oscar nomination. He also rewrote parts of Some Like It Hot with Billy Wilder, refining jokes to fit his rhythm. Nobody expected him to be that sharp. Mamie Van Doren owned her image. She was grouped with Marilyn and Jayne, three blonde bombshells, always treated like decoration. But Mamie didn't let studios write her story. She pushed for parts in B-movies because they offered freedom, more screen time, fewer rules. She took control of her wardrobe, her hair, and her press photos. Nothing went out without her approval. She also managed her own bookings. While other stars waited for studio offers, Mamie did live shows, nightclub appearances, and military tours, earning far more than her on-screen peers. She learned how to survive without the big-budget machine. When offers slowed, she pivoted. Interviews, memoirs, and appearances, she always stayed visible. In the 60s, she was one of the first classic stars to embrace rock and roll culture. She showed up at concerts, rode motorcycles, and gave younger artists a platform. Critics called her a sex symbol past her prime. She didn't care. Mamie made sure her name stayed in print, her image stayed hers, and the checks kept coming. Jayne Mansfield's Mensa-level IQ. She had the curves, the baby voice, and a knack for grabbing headlines. What most people didn't know? She had a reported IQ of 163. She spoke 5 languages, played violin, and studied philosophy at the University of Texas. But when she realized brains weren't getting her in the door, she leaned into the bombshell act. She wasn't just in on the joke, she wrote it. Jayne staged her own publicity stunts, accidental wardrobe slips, surprise photo ops, and outrageous quotes. She even showed up to a press event in a see-through dress, knowing the tabloids couldn't resist. The media called her trashy. Studios thought she was difficult, but she had final say on her contracts and rewrote dialogue in multiple films to better fit her pacing. She also handled her own finances, licensing her image before merch deals were common. Jayne may have played dumb, but it was always a costume. She turned one-liners into full-page spreads and stayed famous on her own terms. Marilyn Monroe outsmarted her type. She was the ultimate Hollywood icon, but behind the soft voice and pinned smile, she was in open rebellion. By 1954, she was sick of being typecast. The studios gave her dumb blonde roles, so she walked. She moved to New York, studied method acting with Lee Strasberg, and launched Marilyn Monroe Productions. She was one of the first women in Hollywood to form her own company. The studio heads panicked. Without her, they lost one of their top box office draws. They begged her back, and she returned with demands: script approval, better roles, and real pay. She got it. The Prince and the Showgirl wasn't just a film. It was her project. She controlled casting and rewrites and gave press conferences as the producer. She also read constantly. Dostoevsky, Freud, philosophy, her books were filled with notes. People saw the surface. They missed the blueprint. Peter Lawford navigated political circles. He wasn't the strongest actor in the Rat Pack, but he had something the others didn't: access. In 1954, he married Patricia Kennedy, sister of John F. Kennedy. That move connected Hollywood's biggest names to Washington's rising power. Lawford used it smartly. He booked Sinatra to perform at Kennedy fundraisers and made sure photos landed in the right papers. He introduced JFK to key studio execs and turned parties into campaign fuel. While the press painted him as a lightweight, he quietly became a fixer. Need a celebrity for a cause? Call Peter. Need a politician to return your call? Peter again. After JFK's win, Lawford's Beach House became a social hub for senators, singers, and studio heads. He kept secrets, arranged deals, and moved between both worlds without drawing heat. People said he only got gigs because of his last name, but behind the scenes, he built the bridge others walked on. Not bad for someone Rat Pack fans called the quiet one. Shirley MacLaine managed her reinvention. She was quirky, charming, and often dismissed as flaky. But behind that smile was a career strategy most actors only dream of. By the mid-1960s, she had starred in The Apartment, Irma La Douce, and Sweet Charity. Studios expected her to coast. She didn't. Instead, she pivoted. She read every contract herself, studied intellectual property law, and made sure her image stayed under her control. While others leaned on agents, Shirley made her own calls. She also started writing. Her memoirs sold millions, starting with Don't Fall Off the Mountain, and kept her relevant between roles. The books weren't fluff. They tackled politics, spirituality, and showbiz head-on. Her reputation as eccentric gave her freedom. She could try anything: television, stage, activism, and no one questioned it. In the 70s, while many of her peers faded, Shirley stayed booked, paid, and unbothered. She didn't follow trends. She reinvented herself before the market shifted. George Burns bet big on Gracie. He played the quiet half of Burns and Allen, often standing in Gracie's shadow. But when she retired in 1958, people thought he'd retire too. He didn't. At 70, he launched a second career, starting with the Sunshine Boys. He wasn't even the first choice. Jack Benny got the part but dropped out. George stepped in and stole the show. He won an Oscar. After that, the offers poured in. Oh God, going in style, national tours, he was working more at 80 than he did at 40. But the truth? George was never just the sidekick. From the early days, he wrote their material, scheduled their tours, and ran the business end. Gracie was the star, but George made sure she had full control of her career. He also reinvested wisely. Real estate, production companies, and comedy albums. The man knew how to build. Goldie Hawn had producer chops. She broke out on Laugh-In as the ditzy, giggling blonde. It stuck so hard that critics didn't take her seriously for years. She didn't wait for them to catch up. In 1980, she produced Private Benjamin. Everyone thought it would flop. A woman-led military comedy? No chance. She proved them wrong. It was a hit, box office gold, and an Oscar nominee. Goldie helped develop the story, fought for studio funding, and oversaw casting. She didn't just star, she ran the whole thing. From there, she built a production company and started backing films that studios didn't want. That included comedies with heart, dramas about women, and scripts she believed in. She also took her time between roles. She wasn't chasing fame. She was choosing smart. By the 90s, Goldie was known as more than an actress. She was a deal maker, someone who knew how to build a movie and get it seen. Bo Derek outplayed the tabloids. She became a sex symbol overnight thanks to 10. Beach scene, braids, slow motion, instantly iconic. But that role also stuck, and many assumed that's all she had. They didn't see the woman running her own image. Bo and husband John Derek controlled their projects top to bottom. She wasn't just starring, she was producing, planning, and editing. Together, they created films outside the studio system, keeping full rights and creative control. Critics slammed the work. Bo kept working anyway. She made movies, licensed her image, and built a brand in fitness, fashion, and beauty. When interviews got hostile, she smiled, deflected, and moved on. She knew how to ride the media wave without letting it knock her down. She also stayed close to veterans' causes, showing up for events and fundraisers long after her box office days ended. Doris Day beat the IRS alone. She was the ultimate good girl star of the 50s and 60s. But after her husband died in 1968, she found out he'd lost everything. Her money, gone. She owed millions in taxes. She didn't panic. She got to work. Without her knowledge, he'd signed her to a television series. Instead of walking away, she honored the deal. The Doris Day Show ran 5 years and pulled in big ratings. That income helped pay off her debts. Then she sued her late husband's lawyer and won $22 million. She could have retired. Instead, she pivoted again. In the 80s, she launched Doris Day's Best Friends on cable. It was low budget, focused on animal advocacy, and a surprise hit. She also turned her Carmel Valley property into a nonprofit animal foundation. Her fundraising? Personal. She'd call donors herself. People remembered the sunny roles. Few realized how much grit was behind them. Some of the old-time Hollywood celebrities were into stuff you wouldn't believe, from having weird obsessions with scat
It is Austin.
to something as bizarre as an irrational fear for the color purple. There is no denying the fact that most of what you're about to be exposed to make absolutely no sense. Charles Lawton's weird diet. In his memoir, Full Service, My Adventures in Hollywood and the Sex Lives of the Stars, Scotty Bowers claims to have either slept with or arranged sexual liaisons for hundreds of the best-known celebrities during Hollywood's golden age. One of the most shocking stories involves British actor Charles Laughton. But that's not all. According to Bowers, Laughton once asked him to bring over a young male guest while his wife was out. When Bowers and the young man arrived, Laughton began making a sandwich. He carefully sliced up lettuce and tomatoes, arranged them on sourdough bread, added a bit of lemon juice, and sprinkled some salt and pepper. This is where it gets interesting. After a few minutes of prep work, Laughton took the bread slices in one hand, picked up a pot with the other, and asked the young man to follow him into the bathroom. But what happened next will shock you. Here's what Bowers describes. Charles was the first to return. He put the plate with the bread slices on the kitchen table. I could see that the lettuce and tomatoes had been lightly smeared with a light brown substance. Seconds later, Ted appeared in the kitchen. His erection was gone, and he was looking decidedly sheepish, perhaps even a trifle embarrassed. I stared at him curiously, and he pulled a face, hoping that Charles wouldn't notice. He pointed at the bread slices on the plate and then lightly patted his backside. And then, believe it or not, Laughton ate the sandwich. Ronald Reagan's obsession with young virgins. Ronald Reagan is often remembered more for his political career than his time in Hollywood, but back in the 1940s and 50s he was one of Tinseltown's leading men. But that's not all. One of the most cringe-inducing rumors about Reagan's Hollywood days comes from his co-star in the 1950 drama Louisa, Piper Laurie. She claims that the future GOP icon took her virginity when he was 39 years old, and she was just 18. But what happened next will shock you. In her memoir, Laurie writes that Reagan first seduced her on the set of their film Louisa, where he played her father. At first, Reagan seemed like a true gentleman. He even asked Laurie's mother for permission to take her on a date. Sounds charming, right? But instead of the glamorous evening Laurie had imagined, Reagan took both her and her mother to his house, where he cooked hamburger steak and salad. This is where it gets interesting. After dinner, things took a strange turn. Reagan led Laurie back to the bedroom. According to her, the actor was an insensitive show-off in bed. He bragged about how long he'd been erect, 40 whole minutes, and how much his condom had cost. But that's not all. Laurie also recounts that Reagan was far from a considerate lover. Not only did he fail to pleasure her, but when she mentioned her lack of an orgasm, his response was harsh and critical. According to her, he said, "There's something wrong with you that you should fix." Howard Hughes's extreme obsession with hygiene. Howard Hughes, the brilliant yet enigmatic tycoon, had a mind that worked in extraordinary ways. His achievements in aviation, film, and business were nothing short of legendary. But alongside his brilliance, there was a peculiar and relentless obsession that dominated his life: cleanliness. Imagine a man so consumed by the fear of germs that he would lock himself away in dark rooms for days, sometimes even weeks. Hughes turned his lavish homes into fortresses of solitude, meticulously sealed to keep out any potential contamination. The windows were often covered, creating a gloomy, almost eerie atmosphere, as if he were living in a perpetual twilight. Hughes's hand-washing routine was nothing short of ritualistic. Picture this. He would wash his hands repeatedly, scrubbing them until they were raw and sometimes even bleeding. It wasn't just a quick rinse. It was a painstaking process, as if he were trying to scrub away invisible threats. His fear of germs was so intense that he believed even the slightest contact could lead to illness or infection. But Hughes's obsession didn't stop at hand-washing. He went to extraordinary lengths to avoid human contact altogether. For instance, if he had to meet someone, he would often communicate through notes or intercom systems, avoiding face-to-face interactions. He would use tissues to touch objects and had a meticulous system for handling everyday items to ensure they remained uncontaminated. Hughes's peculiarities extended to his instructions to staff and associates. He once demanded that all canned food be meticulously washed and scrubbed before opening. Imagine the bewilderment of his staff as they followed these bizarre instructions, knowing that any deviation could trigger one of Hughes's infamous outbursts. Even when he was flying, Hughes couldn't escape his fears. His custom-built planes were designed with his germophobia in mind. He often flew alone or with minimal crew, ensuring that the aircraft remained as sterile as possible. The irony of an aviation pioneer afraid of the very air he conquered is striking, isn't it? Hughes's obsession with cleanliness and germs was a constant battle in his mind. Despite his towering intellect and achievements, he was trapped by his own fears. This relentless battle between his rational, inventive side and his irrational, obsessive side created a fascinating yet tragic figure. The man who soared to great heights in both the literal and metaphorical sense was, in many ways, grounded by his own mind. Mae West's astrology obsession. Mae West, a name synonymous with boldness and wit, was a star who dazzled both on and off the screen. But behind her larger-than-life persona and sultry quips lay a fascination that guided many of her choices: astrology. Mae West was deeply obsessed with astrology. This wasn't just a casual interest or a passing fancy, it was a central pillar of her decision-making process. Imagine a woman who, despite her confidence and unshakable self-assuredness, would not make any major life decisions without first consulting her astrologer. Whether it was a career move, a personal relationship, or even the timing of her day-to-day activities, the stars had to align for Mae. Her belief in astrology was so profound that it influenced her creative work. She wrote a play called The Constant Sinner, which was steeped in astrological themes. The narrative wasn't just a backdrop for her characters. It was interwoven with the celestial movements and zodiac signs that Mae believed so deeply in. This wasn't just art imitating life. It was life, love, and destiny dictated by the cosmos. Think about the confidence and assertiveness Mae West exuded in every role she played and every public appearance she made. Now imagine that same woman, with all her bravado, quietly consulting her astrologer in private, seeking guidance from the alignment of planets and stars. It's a striking contrast, isn't it? The idea that such a powerful figure would defer to celestial charts and predictions adds a fascinating layer to her already complex persona. Astrology wasn't just a hobby for Mae West, it was a way of life. She saw the patterns and signs as a roadmap, helping her navigate the tumultuous landscape of Hollywood and her personal life. This deep-rooted belief in the stars provided her with a sense of control and direction, a way to make sense of the often unpredictable nature of fame and fortune. Marlene Dietrich and collecting men's clothes. Beyond her screen persona, Marlene had an intriguing obsession that set her apart from her contemporaries: a fascination with men's clothing. This wasn't just a passing fancy or a quirky interest. It was a profound passion that influenced both her personal life and her public image. Dietrich didn't merely collect men's clothing, she wore it with a sense of ease and confidence that challenged the norms of her time. In an era when women were expected to adhere to strict fashion conventions, Dietrich's choice to don suits, trousers, and tailored shirts was nothing short of revolutionary. Picture her walking into a Hollywood event in a perfectly fitted tuxedo, her hair meticulously styled, and her makeup flawless. The image was striking and unforgettable, making a powerful statement about gender and fashion. She was one of the first women to popularize androgynous fashion in Hollywood. Her style wasn't about rejecting femininity, but about embracing a broader spectrum of identity. By wearing men's clothing, Dietrich played with societal expectations, blending masculinity and femininity in a way that was both provocative and liberating. She made it clear that clothing was an expression of self, not a strict adherence to gender norms. Dietrich's fascination with men's clothing went beyond the surface. She appreciated the craftsmanship, the structure, and the way these garments allowed her to move and present herself. Collecting these pieces became a hobby, a form of self-expression, and a way to assert her individuality. Imagine her private wardrobe, filled with an array of perfectly tailored suits, each piece carefully chosen and cherished. Her influence extended far beyond her personal collection. Dietrich's androgynous style inspired countless designers and fashion enthusiasts, paving the way for future generations to explore and embrace non-traditional fashion choices. She wasn't just a style icon. She was a pioneer who challenged the fashion industry's rigid boundaries. Peter Sellers' obsession against the color purple. Most people have typical fears like heights, snakes, or spiders, but Peter Sellers, he had a bizarre terror of the color purple. Now, Sellers' eccentricity wasn't the lovable, bumbling kind he often portrayed in his roles. It was far more chaotic and disturbing, making him a difficult person to be around. On film sets, Sellers was infamous for his explosive outbursts. Imagine him in a fit of rage, yelling at his wives, smashing dishes, and even brandishing a shotgun to vent his anger. His tantrums didn't stop there. He clashed with directors and producers, despite their higher status, and would often get lower-level staff fired if they crossed him. His erratic behavior was compounded by his vague racism and intense superstitions. One superstition in particular involved the famed director Vittorio De Sica. While they were working on After the Fox, Sellers saw De Sica berate a script girl for wearing purple. The director ominously declared that purple was the color of death. This statement profoundly impacted Sellers, who became convinced that the color purple could kill. From then on, Sellers' fear of purple dominated his actions. Any time he encountered the color, he'd fly into a panic, throwing tantrums and insisting it be removed. This irrational fear added yet another layer of unpredictability to an already volatile personality, making life around him a constant challenge. Charlie Chaplin's obsession with younger women. Charlie Chaplin, the legendary actor, filmmaker, and comedian, known for his iconic character, the Little Tramp, also had a much darker side to his personal life. Beyond the silver screen, Chaplin's relationships were the subject of much controversy, largely due to his well-known obsession with very young women. This fixation shaped his personal and professional life in ways that continue to spark debate. Chaplin's first marriage was to Mildred Harris in 1918, when he was 29 and she was just 16. Their relationship began when Harris was only 15, highlighting the significant age difference and Chaplin's preference for much younger partners. The marriage was short-lived, lasting only 2 years, but it set a precedent for Chaplin's future romantic endeavors. Following his divorce from Harris, Chaplin embarked on a series of relationships with teenage girls. His second marriage was to Lita Gray, who was 16 when they started their relationship and 18 when they married in 1924. Chaplin was 35 at the time. Their union was fraught with difficulties from the start. Gray's youth and inexperience clashed with Chaplin's controlling nature, leading to a tumultuous relationship that ended in a highly publicized and acrimonious divorce. The divorce proceedings revealed many sordid details about Chaplin's behavior, further cementing his controversial reputation. Despite the scandal, Chaplin continued to pursue young women. His third marriage was to Paulette Goddard, a rising star in Hollywood, who was 21 when they met, and Chaplin was 47. Though their marriage was kept relatively private and the age gap was not as stark as in his previous relationships, the pattern of significant age differences persisted. Chaplin's fourth and final marriage was to Una O'Neill, the daughter of playwright Eugene O'Neill. Una was just 18 when she married Chaplin, who was 54 at the time. This marriage, despite the age gap, proved to be the most stable and enduring of Chaplin's life. They remained together until Chaplin's death in 1977, and they had 8 children. Una's unwavering support and devotion seemed to bring Chaplin a semblance of the stability that had eluded him in his previous relationships. His preference for young women was not limited to his marriages. He was known to have numerous relationships with teenage girls throughout his life, often starting when the girls were still minors. This behavior, while not uncommon in the early 20th century, drew significant criticism and legal challenges. In one notable case, Chaplin faced a paternity suit from actress Joan Barry, who was 23 years younger than him. The case, which included allegations of coercion and manipulation, was widely covered by the media and further tarnished Chaplin's public image. The controversy surrounding Chaplin's relationships with young women has led to a complex legacy. On one hand, he is celebrated as a genius of early cinema, whose contributions to film and comedy are unparalleled. On the other hand, his personal life raises uncomfortable questions about the dynamics of power and exploitation. Chaplin's behavior reflects the broader societal attitudes of his time, where older men often pursued younger women, sometimes with dire consequences. Gloria Swanson's obsession with health and fasting. Gloria Swanson, one of Hollywood's most glamorous and enduring stars, was not only known for her striking beauty and acting prowess, but also for her intense dedication to health foods and fasting. Decades before the wellness industry became mainstream, Swanson was a pioneer in the realm of health and nutrition, turning her lifestyle into a fervent obsession that shaped her daily routines and public persona. Swanson's journey into the world of health foods and fasting began at a time when processed foods were becoming increasingly popular in America. Rejecting this trend, she delved into natural and organic eating habits, believing that what she consumed had a direct impact on her overall well-being and longevity. Her approach to diet was meticulous and uncompromising. She scrutinized every ingredient, ensuring that her meals were not only nutritious but also free from any artificial additives or preservatives. Her commitment to healthy foods extended beyond just eating organic produce. Swanson embraced a diet rich in raw vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds, long before such dietary choices became fashionable. She was particularly fond of juicing, often preparing fresh vegetable and fruit juices to maintain her energy and vitality. This dedication to a clean diet was not merely a fad for Swanson. It was a deeply ingrained lifestyle choice that she believed was essential for sustaining her health and beauty. In addition to her strict dietary habits, Swanson was a firm believer in the benefits of fasting. She would often embark on long fasts, abstaining from food for extended periods to cleanse her body and mind. These fasts were not just about physical health. Swanson saw them as a way to achieve mental clarity and spiritual renewal. Her fasting routines were rigorous, sometimes lasting several days, during which she would consume only water or freshly squeezed juices. This practice was unconventional and even controversial at the time, but Swanson was unwavering in her belief in its benefits. Swanson's obsession with health foods and fasting was also evident in her social interactions and public appearances. She often spoke about her dietary practices, sharing her knowledge and experiences with others. She became an advocate for healthy living, encouraging those around her to adopt similar habits. Her influence extended to her close circle of friends and colleagues in Hollywood, many of whom were inspired by her dedication and began to explore healthier lifestyles themselves. Her commitment to health was not without its challenges. Swanson faced skepticism and criticism from those who viewed her practices as extreme or unnecessary. However, she remained steadfast, confident in the knowledge that her choices were beneficial. Her dedication to health and wellness was a testament to her discipline and determination, qualities that also defined her illustrious career. Swanson's approach to health was holistic. She believed in the interconnectedness of physical, mental, and emotional well-being. This belief guided her lifestyle choices, from her diet and fasting routines to her emphasis on regular exercise and stress management. She practiced yoga and meditation, long before these practices became popular in the West, as part of her daily regimen to maintain balance and harmony in her life. Her obsession with health foods and fasting also influenced her work. Swanson often took on roles that reflected her personal beliefs, portraying characters who embodied strength, resilience, and a sense of well-being. Her off-screen persona, as a health-conscious and disciplined individual, became an integral part of her public image, distinguishing her from many of her contemporaries. Behind the glamour of old Hollywood was a hotbed of scandal. Think love triangles, blackmail, and rumors so wild they'd make Twitter explode today. The Clark Gable and Loretta Young love child scandal. One of the most whispered about was the rumor that Clark Gable fathered a secret child with Loretta Young. The year was 1935, and the two were co-stars in The Call of the Wild. Off camera, it was said sparks flew. Gable, married to socialite Rhea Langham, had a reputation for on-set flings. Loretta Young, on the other hand, was known for her strict Catholic faith and carefully curated image of innocence. After filming Wrapped, Young disappeared from the spotlight. Months later, she returned, announcing she had adopted a baby girl named Judy. Her story was that Judy was an orphan who needed a home, but Judy's striking resemblance to Gable, right down to his distinctive ears, made the cover story hard to believe. Whispers of an affair and a secret pregnancy circulated immediately. Both stars stayed quiet. Gable, often referred to as the King of Hollywood, never publicly addressed the rumors. Young stuck to her adoption claim, protecting her career and reputation. Insiders, however, hinted that Gable made secret visits to Judy, further fueling the speculation. MGM reportedly stepped in to bury the story, fearful of how it might damage its stars. For nearly 6 decades, the truth remained hidden. It wasn't until 1994 that Young, in a rare interview, confirmed what many had long suspected. Judy was her biological daughter, the result of what she described as a non-consensual encounter with Gable during the filming of The Call of the Wild. This shocking revelation cast the scandal in a far darker light, reframing what had been romanticized as an affair into a story of exploitation. The confession added complexity to both Gable and Young's public personas. For Judy, it ended a lifetime of rumors, but also exposed the darker side of old Hollywood. Joan Crawford's alleged blue movies. Her career was the definition of Hollywood success, but behind her polished image, whispers of a scandal threatened to tarnish her legacy. By the 1930s, Crawford was one of MGM's brightest stars. However, rumors suggested her rise to fame had a darker backstory. The claims that before her Hollywood breakthrough, she'd appeared in adult films to make ends meet. These films, often called stag films, were part of an underground scene in the 1920s. Crawford, known then as Lucille Ball, was said to have participated in these productions during her early days as a struggling dancer. Fans found her swift transformation into a Hollywood star suspicious, speculating that someone powerful had helped her bury her past. Eddie Mannix, MGM's infamous fixer, was often linked to these rumors. Mannix was the studio's go-to guy for cleaning up messes and protecting its stars. Allegedly, he stepped in to handle the Crawford situation, tracking down and destroying any negatives of the supposed films. MGM was known for its obsession with controlling the public image of its stars, so the idea isn't far-fetched. Still, no concrete proof of Mannix's involvement, or the films themselves, has ever surfaced. Crawford, for her part, denied the allegations her entire life. She called the rumors malicious lies meant to drag her down. Decades later, her adopted daughter Christina reignited public interest in Crawford's private life with her controversial book Mommy Dearest. While the memoir didn't address the adult film rumors directly, its shocking portrayal of Crawford added fuel to the fire about her hidden past. Despite the intrigue, no evidence has ever confirmed the existence of these alleged films. Were they a smear tactic against a powerful woman in Hollywood, or was there some truth to the whispers? We may never know. But the rumors have ensured that Crawford's name remains as infamous as it is iconic, proving that Hollywood's obsession with scandal knows no bounds. Errol Flynn's espionage allegations. He was the ultimate Hollywood swashbuckler, famous for his charisma and swordplay. But during World War II, a darker story started to circulate. Flynn, the man behind Robin Hood's smile, was rumored to be a Nazi spy. As wild as it sounded, the FBI took these whispers seriously and kept an active file on him. The allegations weren't baseless. Flynn had a close friendship with Hermann Urban, an Austrian doctor with confirmed Nazi ties. The two shared a love of travel, but Urban's documented connections to German intelligence raised alarms. Flynn's frequent trips to Europe during the war didn't help his case. Add to that his Austrian roots and his perceived indifference to the Allied cause, and the rumors began to stick. The conspiracy gained momentum in 1980, thanks to Charles Hyam's book Errol Flynn, The Untold Story. Hyam painted Flynn as a double agent, claiming the actor passed information to the Nazis while maintaining his Hollywood image. The book alleged Flynn's charm and international lifestyle made him the perfect spy. It also accused Flynn of using his Hollywood clout to help Erben and other Nazi sympathizers. But Hyam's claims were heavily criticized. Historians and Flynn supporters argued the evidence was flimsy and speculative. The FBI's files, while extensive, lacked any smoking gun. Flynn's defenders labeled Hyam's book a hit piece, accusing the author of exaggerating for shock value. Many believe the rumors were fueled by Flynn's reckless lifestyle rather than actual treachery. Despite the pushback, the damage was done. The mere suggestion of espionage left a stain on Flynn's legacy. Even today, the idea of Hollywood's most dashing hero harboring Nazi sympathies remains a tantalizing what-if. So what's the truth? Was Flynn just an adventure junkie with bad judgment in friends, or did his charm mask something far more sinister? The lack of definitive evidence keeps the mystery alive, leaving fans and critics to debate whether Flynn's greatest act was on-screen or off. Marilyn Monroe's mysterious diaries. Her death in 1962 left behind more questions than answers. One of the most persistent rumors revolves around her alleged secret diaries. These journals supposedly contained shocking details about her relationships with John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert. For decades, these rumored diaries have fueled conspiracy theories and added to the intrigue surrounding Monroe's life and death. Monroe was known for keeping journals. She used them to write poetry, reflect on her life, and document personal experiences. Biographer Anthony Summers, in his book Goddess: The Secret Lives of Marilyn Monroe, suggested she recorded sensitive details from conversations with the Kennedys. Allegedly, some entries included political secrets and information that could have made her a liability. The circumstances of Monroe's death have only added to the speculation. Found lifeless in her Brentwood home, she was officially ruled a victim of a barbiturate overdose. However, the involvement of the FBI and LAPD in the investigation raised eyebrows. Rumors claim Monroe's house was searched extensively, and anything incriminating, like the alleged diaries, was quietly removed. Some close to Monroe, including her friends, insisted they had seen her write about her encounters with powerful men, adding fuel to the fire. Despite decades of speculation, no one has ever found these diaries. Some believe they were destroyed to protect the reputations of high-profile figures. Others argue the diaries never existed, suggesting they were invented by the media to sensationalize her tragic story. The lack of evidence hasn't stopped books, documentaries, and theorists from speculating about what they might have contained. Charles Chaplin's paternity battle. Charles Chaplin may have revolutionized film, but his personal life was often front-page news. By the 1940s, Chaplin was already a magnet for controversy, and the 1943 paternity suit filed by Joan Barry added fuel to the fire. Barry, a 22-year-old aspiring actress, claimed Chaplin was the father of her daughter, Carole Ann. The case quickly became a media frenzy, overshadowing Chaplin's cinematic brilliance. Barry's relationship with Chaplin had ended before her pregnancy, and he firmly denied fathering her child. He pointed to Barry's erratic behavior, stalking him, breaking into his home, as evidence of her instability. Still, her claims gained momentum, and the case went to court. In a bid to prove his innocence, Chaplin agreed to a blood test. At the time, this was cutting-edge science. The results were clear. Chaplin was not the biological father, but there was a catch. Under California law, blood tests were inadmissible in paternity cases. The jury ruled against Chaplin, ordering him to pay child support. The verdict caused public outrage, with many questioning the fairness of the decision. The scandal didn't stop in the courtroom. It gave Chaplin's enemies, including FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, exactly what they needed to intensify their attacks. Hoover, who was already suspicious of Chaplin's political leanings, used the trial to paint him as both immoral and un-American. The FBI's campaign against Chaplin wasn't subtle. It added pressure to an already tense situation, leading to his forced departure from the U.S. in 1952. He relocated to Switzerland, where he spent the rest of his life. Despite the controversy, Chaplin continued making groundbreaking films, though the paternity case cast a long shadow over his later years. Judy Garland's alleged drug coercion. Judy's talent lit up the screen, but her life behind the scenes told a darker story. Her career, especially during her teenage years, has been heavily scrutinized for the alleged exploitation she endured under MGM's iron grip. Many believe the studio orchestrated her dependency on drugs to keep her working at an unrelenting pace. Garland was just 13 when she signed with MGM. While her voice was unmatched, executives cruelly criticized her appearance, labeling her the Little Hunchback. To fit Hollywood's rigid standards, she was subjected to harsh dietary controls. Reports suggest her meals consisted of black coffee, chicken soup, and diet pills, all closely monitored by studio staff. The most shocking claims involve amphetamines, pep pills, allegedly given to Garland to keep her energized for marathon filming schedules. During The Wizard of Oz, she was said to work up to 18-hour days, running on little more than these stimulants. To help her sleep, barbiturates were reportedly prescribed, creating a dangerous cycle of dependency. By adulthood, Garland's struggles with addiction were undeniable. Her personal life and career began to show the strain. She often spoke candidly about her experience with the studio system, saying, "They had us working days and nights on end. They'd give us pills to keep us on our feet long after we were exhausted, then knock us out with sleeping pills when the work was done." Her battles didn't stop there. She faced public breakdowns, hospitalizations, and strained relationships. Despite these challenges, her raw talent and resilience kept her fighting for her place in Hollywood. Garland's tragic death in 1969, at just 47 years old, was attributed to an overdose. It was a heartbreaking end for a star who had given so much to the industry but received so little care in return. Her story remains a grim reminder of how old Hollywood often treated its stars as commodities rather than people, prioritizing profit over well-being. Judy Garland will always be remembered for her brilliance, but her struggles highlight the darker side of fame in the industry's golden era. The murder mystery of Thelma Todd. Her death in December 1935 stunned Hollywood. Known as the Ice Cream Blonde, she was beloved for her comedic timing and glamorous looks. At 29, Todd was a star on the rise, transitioning from silent films to talkies with ease. She also ran Thelma Todd's Sidewalk Cafe, a hotspot for celebrities along the Pacific Coast Highway. But her success was overshadowed by her mysterious death, which has remained unsolved. Todd's body was found slumped in her car inside the garage of her lover and business partner, Roland West. The garage, located above her cafe, became the center of intense speculation. The coroner ruled her death accidental, caused by carbon monoxide poisoning from her car's running engine. Still, the details surrounding her death didn't add up, sparking rumors that refused to die. Weeks before her death, Todd allegedly received threats from mobsters demanding money from her cafe. Organized crime figures saw her business as prime real estate for their operations. Her refusal to comply may have put her in danger. Adding fuel to the fire, Todd was seen arguing at a party the night before with her ex-husband, Pat DeSico, who had known mob connections. Then there was Roland West. West's controlling behavior and rocky relationship with Todd made him another prime suspect in the public's eyes. Some believed West locked her in the garage after an argument, not realizing the car was still running. West's shifting accounts of that night only deepened the suspicion. The coroner's report didn't help matters. It mentioned minor bruises on Todd's face and body, leading to speculation about a possible struggle. Yet there were no clear signs of foul play, leaving investigators without solid evidence. Despite the public outcry, the case was closed as an accidental death. Thelma Todd's story is still a favorite among true crime buffs. Was it a tragic accident? A mob hit? A lover's quarrel gone horribly wrong? The truth remains elusive, ensuring her death remains one of Hollywood's most talked-about mysteries. Rock Hudson's hidden truth. He had it all: looks, charm, and a career most actors could only dream of. He became Hollywood's go-to leading man in the 1950s, starring in romantic hits that solidified his image as the ultimate symbol of masculinity. Fans loved him, studios relied on him, and his name alone could sell out theaters. But behind the perfectly polished exterior was a secret that Hollywood worked overtime to keep hidden. Rumors about Hudson's sexuality began circulating early in his career. Back then, even a hint of being gay could end a star's career. Hudson's agent, Henry Wilson, was infamous for covering up scandals and managing his clients' images with ruthless efficiency. When whispers about Hudson started growing louder, Wilson orchestrated a hasty solution: a marriage. In 1955, Hudson married Phyllis Gates, Wilson's secretary. The timing wasn't subtle. It came right after a tabloid threatened to publish a story about Hudson's personal life. Gates later claimed she didn't know Hudson was gay when they married, but skeptics have doubted her version of events. The marriage lasted 3 years, but by then it had served its purpose, silencing the rumors. Behind closed doors, Hudson lived a carefully compartmentalized life. Close friends and co-stars knew the truth, but loyalty and fear of the industry's backlash kept them quiet. Studio executives wielded immense power and had no problem squashing tabloid stories that could tarnish their golden boy. Everything changed in 1985 when Hudson announced he had immune deficiency syndrome. He was the first major celebrity to publicly disclose the diagnosis, a move that shocked fans and confirmed the rumors. The revelation came at a time when advanced HIV disease was deeply stigmatized, and Hudson's bravery helped bring global attention to the crisis. His death later that year was mourned worldwide and exposed the hypocrisy of an industry that demanded perfection at any cost. Lana Turner and the Johnny Stompanato murder. Lana Turner's relationship with Johnny Stompanato had everything tabloids could dream of: a Hollywood icon, a mobster boyfriend, and an explosive ending. Stompanato, a known associate of crime boss Mickey Cohen, wasn't just bad news. He was dangerous. Despite his charm, his violent streak quickly turned their romance into a toxic mess of arguments and reconciliations. By 1958, the relationship had reached its breaking point. On April 4th, an argument in Turner's Beverly Hills home escalated to violence. Turner later testified that Stompanato threatened her, causing her 14-year-old daughter, Cheryl Crane, to step in. Grabbing a kitchen knife, Cheryl stabbed him in the abdomen. He died almost instantly. The fallout was chaotic. The media swarmed Turner's home, turning the incident into a nationwide scandal. Headlines screamed speculation about what really happened that night. At the coroner's inquest, Cheryl claimed she acted in self-defense to protect her mother. Turner backed her up, tearfully recounting the abuse she'd endured. The jury ruled it justifiable homicide, but whispers of a different story refused to die. Some questioned whether Cheryl, a teenager with no history of violence, could deliver such a precise fatal wound. Others believed Turner herself had wielded the knife and that Cheryl took the blame to save her mother's career. Stompanato's mob connections added another layer of intrigue. There were rumors that his death wasn't an accident at all. Some suggested Mickey Cohen had orchestrated the killing either to eliminate liability or settle a personal grudge. Cohen, of course, denied any involvement. Despite the jury's decision, the scandal haunted Turner. While she continued acting, her glamorous image was forever tied to the tragedy. Cheryl, too, struggled with the weight of public scrutiny. The case remains one of old Hollywood's most infamous stories, blending celebrity drama with true crime. Whether it was a desperate act of protection or a cover-up, the Stompanato murder still fuels endless speculation. Decades later, it's clear this was no ordinary Hollywood breakup. It was a headline-grabbing scandal that left scars on everyone involved. The Black Dahlia and Hollywood. The murder of Elizabeth Short, better known as the Black Dahlia, remains one of Hollywood's darkest mysteries. In January 1947, her mutilated body was found in a vacant Los Angeles lot. The crime was horrifying and left posed in a gruesome manner. The case immediately grabbed headlines, with every sordid detail plastered across newspapers. Short, just 22 years old, had come to L.A. chasing dreams of becoming an actress. Like many others, she struggled to find work, often relying on friends or admirers for support. When her murder hit the news, her personal life became fodder for speculation. Reporters and the public alike were eager to link her to Hollywood's elite. Rumors swirled that she had attended exclusive parties thrown by powerful industry figures. Some even suggested she had rejected the wrong man's advances, which led to her untimely death. One theory that refuses to die is the involvement of Dr. George Hodel, a prominent and wealthy physician. Hodel was known for hosting extravagant gatherings attended by artists, intellectuals, and Hollywood insiders. Decades later, his own son, Steve Hodel, a former LAPD detective, accused him of being the killer. Steve presented evidence, including old photos of a woman resembling Short and his father's medical expertise, which matched the surgical precision of the crime. The accusations against George Hodel didn't come out of nowhere. During the 1940s, he was investigated for other crimes, including the suspicious death of his secretary. Although Hodel was never charged in the Black Dahlia case, his connection to it has fueled endless speculation. Elizabeth Short's murder remains unsolved, but her name is forever tied to the shadowy side of Hollywood. Whether she was targeted for her ambitions, a chance encounter, or something more sinister, the crime highlighted the dangers lurking in the industry.